And since I'm the child and grandchild of survivors, I'm going to take the prerogative and ask the first question. And I'm also interested in Boaz, and I have written an article about children. I've written a little bit about children. So my first question is, who is a child survivor? Because it's very interesting. Just in my own case, my dad went into the camps when he was 13. He came out when he was 16. He was born in 1929. Is that still a child? He was looking for other things. He's not reconstructing. He's not thinking about what. He's really trying to reconstruct what happened. But what's very interesting is that my dad is doing exactly what your subject did. His whole adult life, he's been looking for documents to confirm where he was and what happened. So, who, by your definition, is the child survivor? Is there a certain time? Is there a year? Say, is 1929 still a child survivor? Is it 1935? Because there's a big difference between somebody who was born in 1929 and somebody who was born in 1935. So, anybody want? Oh, yes.
Do you want us to?
Yeah. Yes. Let's go question by question.
That's an excellent question. Thank you very much. Is that working? Yes. I grappled with this a lot when I started my research. And there's a wonderful short article by Susan Suleiman that engaged with this question. I don't know if you know it, it's called the 1.5 Generation. Absolutely brilliant article. She asked this question at length, kind of in a theoretical way. I myself, when I started this project, and I'm only part of the way into it, I really was interested in the testimony of the very youngest, as it were. Because I wanted to engage with how do you speak about, how do you bear witness to a past you don't really remember concretely, or maybe you don't remember at all. So to make sure that I was just kind of getting that sample, the cutoff for my own project is born 1935 or after. Most of the people in my sample are born around 1938, 39, 40. But I think you could have a wonderful conversation about the teenage years and what is a child and how how children are different, kind of pre-age 11 versus post-age 11 versus the very smallest, the middle ones and then the older ones. They are all going to remember in very distinct ways.
Well, I also wrote down to talk about Suleiman's paper. I think this is the basic paper for anyone wanting to define what is a child survivor. She asked all the right questions. I think this is really excellent. We had to decide also in our project when we started doing, so we decided on born 1930. 30, I mean, and 1930 we said he was either a child or a very young teenager during the Holocaust, and after that he was either a young teenager or a young adult maybe, but older teenagers. I would just like to say that we have to remember that people working with children talk about old children who are old. I mean, the fact that we're talking, for our research, we have to choose a line, so we take a date. But one of the things caretakers talk about children is about that they were old. They were like old people. So we don't have the mental age for such a research. We have only the dateline. We chose 1930. I now first hear 1935 as an option.
It's kind of random.
Let's see what happened in statistics. What was your day? How did you decide who is a child? If they are in the collection, they are a child?
No, I am looking for a testimony and I check if it was hidden children. If there's hidden children, I take them into consideration, but I don't make further.
Can I add something? Sorry, just quickly. I just finished writing a paper about the child survivor testimony from that 1983 gathering, and there I used a subjective framework, which was if people defined themselves as children, then that was right.
Well, Bruna, I wanted to add a little bit to Boaz's point, because I thought about the same thing about the mental age. When we look at diaries, for example, when they are written by 13-year-olds, they speak like 18-year-olds actually, or 20-year-olds. So this complicates a little bit the idea of when we look at children's testimony, child survivor testimonies, as this pure vision of good and bad, or how they portray things, because it doesn't really fit that. Yeah? So can you elaborate a little bit to this contradiction?
I will start with saying that you are right. And what happens the day after the war, they are treated as children. So they went through a lot of things. They are now old children, but then they go into the orphanages or children's homes or whatever, and then they are children again. And there's a big effort to make them children, back into children. This idea of the mental age, I think, I don't know how to address it as a researcher. I can describe it, I cannot, but I think this is something that is worth exploring. How do you evaluate a child? And maybe we should go back to what Rebecca said. Children are different, like adults are different. So it wouldn't be good for the statistics, but it would be good to understand that people respond to events differently. And therefore they are, each one is in the case unique.
I have one comment to Boaz's paper. He said that perpetrators became even more cruel in those child testimonies because their crimes were committed against children. I have the same impression from my post-war period because when I published the paper, the first voices were, okay, they committed those crimes against adults, but everyone is shocked when we talk about those crimes from post-war period committed against children, because even those who try to justify with Jewish communist picture, they simply stay silent because there is no justification.
It's dealing with the Kindertransporter, the Church from Kindertransporter.
Thank you, that's an excellent question. The short answer is kind of no. My initial idea was not to deal with the Kindertransport, only because I know of several other excellent researchers who are specifically working on the Kindertransport, and I wanted to do something different. But the Kindertransport have a way of sneaking into things. So basically, my non-random sampling, I put out a couple of calls asking for people to be interviewed. And I interviewed everyone who approached me. And in the end, 2 of the people in my sample were Kindertransport. And there's no way I can leave their experiences out because they were such remarkable interviews. So they have snuck in slightly, but I've tried to take it in a different direction. Partly because I found there are some historians working on the Kindertransport, but very few historians working on the post-war lives of child survivors, the non-Kindertransport child survivors.
I think we have time for one more question before
Just one comment. I think the whole issue of post-war child survivors is, although there is research being done, there's still a lot of work to do. And this work will inform back the work done on children in the war. But I think there's so much to do with the aftermath, and the work is being done. Like, we have researchers doing this, but there's still a lot of work to do, and I think it will inform also our work, can inform present-day challenges with child refugees, children in conflict. If we will research more the post-war years, we'll have more answers for what is happening today in the world.
All right, there's time for one more question.
For Boaz, do you have any evidence of testimonies of children who were hidden on Christian houses, were paid to hold these children, how they were, how people act toward them, how when they use something like that?
We have the expert here, Emuna. Say a few words on this, Emuna, please. A few words on this, on post-war attitudes to rescuing homes in Poland.
Yes, it's impossible to answer now because it's really a story. It's a long story, so I tell you where to look for them. But I'd like to refer to the subject of age. Why in 1930, why is that should be the border? We have to choose certain stages in the war. So the war started 39. So
oldest children in that group would be 9 years old. So there are children no doubt. Those who were born in 27, there are also children in their age because there are only 12 or 11. But if we take the state of 42, that in most, we use this year for the extermination year, so those who were born in 27 are already chosen to work by the German. So that's one of the reasons. The third stage is 45. In Poland 44, but mostly 45. Those who were born in 30 already completely independent. When the activists come to look for them in different villages, they are running away because they see themselves as those who make their own decisions about themselves. So it could be that we take those that were born in 27 or 28 or 21 because them, of course, they are independent. So that's the reason that in research we choose the year of 30s because this can give us a long distance of years that we can put the stages together. That's all.
All right, thank you very much. Everyone, please join me in thanking you.